In the 1970s, breakfast wasn't just food, it was an event. The cereal box was your comic strip, the back was your puzzle book, and the inside sometimes held toys worth fighting your siblings over. Every spoonful was an adventure. Let me ask you this. How many of those wild, colorful cereals do you actually remember? Today, we're taking a nostalgic trip through 25 cereals from the 1970s you probably forgot you grew up with. But stick around until the end, because some of these flavors may jog a memory you didn't even know was still hiding in the back of your mind. Number 1, Freakies. Launched in 1972 by Ralston, Freakies was one of the strangest cereals ever to hit grocery shelves. Instead of a single mascot, it gave kids 7 characters: Goody, Gargle, Grumble, Ham-Hose, Snorkeldorf, Cow Mumble, and bossy little leader Boss Moss. Each lived in a tree where the Freakies cereal grew. Remember the flavor? Sweetened corn puffs, not too different from others on the market, but the bizarre monster mascots made it unique. The commercials were unreal, the boxes were collectible, and you just couldn't get enough of the oddball gang. Freakies burned bright for a few years before disappearing by the late 70s, though nostalgia has kept its cult following alive. But breakfast was about to get smooth and sugary. Number 2, Super Sugar Crisp. Only a handful of cereals were as famous in the 70s as Post's Super Sugar Crisp. Golden puffed wheat soaked in sweetness, paired with the coolest mascot of them all, Sugar Bear. He wasn't zany like other mascots. He was smooth, relaxed, and always singing in that deep baritone voice. Commercials showed him outwitting villains, all while calmly enjoying his cereal. Though there were some concerns from the parents regarding sugar overload, the kids were addicted. In fact, Super Sugar was proudly in the name until the health wave of the 80s trimmed it down to Golden Crisp. Still, in the 70s, it wasn't just cereal, it was a lifestyle, with Sugar Bear leading the way. But Post cereals took us straight back to the Stone Age with this prehistoric breakfast. Quick pause here, because I want to know, which cereal from your childhood do you wish they'd bring back tomorrow? Leave it in the comments. We might feature your pick in an upcoming video. Number 3, Dino Pebbles. Dino Pebbles was a prehistoric spin-off of Fruity Pebbles that leaned heavily into dinosaurs. It kept the fruity rice crisps kids already loved, but added colorful marshmallow dino bones and fossils for extra fun. The commercials tied it to the Flintstones, where kids could imagine digging through a cereal bowl just like archaeologists. It was a treasure hunt at the breakfast table. Crunchy bites with little marshmallow surprises hidden inside. Though it never lasted as long as Fruity Pebbles, for the kids who had it, Dino Pebbles felt like Saturday morning cartoons in edible form. Today, it's one of those cereals remembered more for the marshmallows and commercials than for how it tasted. Dino Pebbles were amazing, but here's another cereal you've probably forgotten completely. Number 4, Kaboom. If there was ever a cereal that looked like a carnival exploded in your bowl, Kaboom was it. Introduced by General Mills in 1969, this rainbow-colored cereal came in star and circular shapes, always with that unsettling circus clown mascot grinning from the box. The taste was a sugary blast, but kids remembered Kaboom more for the colors than the flavor. Parents were skeptical. The artificial hues were loud even by 70s standards. However, kids begged for it because the clown felt larger than life. Kaboom stuck around longer than most novelty cereals, but by the 2000s, it disappeared completely. For those who had it in the 70s, though, pouring Kaboom felt like scooping out a box of pure chaos and fun. If you think Kaboom's clown had an out-of-this-world appearance, just wait, because the next one literally had magic in its name. Number 5, Magic Puffs. Magic Puffs' creation was aimed at making something whimsical and mysterious for breakfast tables. The cereal was a sugary puff, not far off from other sweetened offerings of the decade. But what really sold it was the advertising. Boxes promised you that something magical was inside, often with prize tie-ins, special offers, or limited edition designs that made the cereal feel like a treasure chest. The cereal itself didn't quite stand out enough to hold ground in front of the big hitters, but kids in the 70s still remember waking up excited to see if their magic came true. By the end of the decade, it vanished quietly from shelves, but for those few years, it felt like every bite carried a secret. The next cereal was bold enough to throw a party. By the way, if these breakfast memories are bringing back that Saturday morning magic, hit the like button. It helps us dig up even more forgotten 70s cereals. And don't forget to subscribe. We share nostalgic cereal trips like this every other day. Number 6, Crunchy Logs. Crunchy Logs may have been one of the strangest ideas in cereal history. Imagine breakfast made to look like little wooden logs. Odd, right? This cereal hit shelves in the mid-70s, tapping into the whole pioneer and outdoor craze of the time. Each piece was a sweetened oat pressed into a log shape with a surprisingly heavy crunch. Kids loved the novelty, while parents could convince themselves it was heartier than the usual sugar bombs. The ads leaned into frontier imagery, making breakfast feel like a lumber camp. It didn't stick around for long, but for a short while, mornings felt like a forest of sweet, crunchy firewood. If you thought tree bark-shaped cereal was wild, just wait. What comes next will make you wonder how they even thought of it back then. Number 7, grins and smiles and giggles and laughs. Even the name was a mouthful. It came out in the mid-70s, and this cereal had one of the most unique mascots ever, a mechanical cereal machine named Cecil, who cranked out the smiling-shaped pieces. The commercials were wild, showing this bizarre contraption trying to spit out cereal while goofy characters made kids laugh. The taste was very similar to Kaboom, but the fun was in the shapes and the silly advertising. While kids loved it, parents didn't always appreciate the sugar rush that followed, and the cereal quietly disappeared by the end of the decade. Still, for 70s kids, it was one of those boxes that felt like pure Saturday morning cartoon energy. And after a cereal that made you laugh, the next one brought pure star power. Number 8, Sprinkle Spangles. Sprinkle Spangles was General Mills' patriotic-themed cereal, shaped like stars in red, white, and blue colors. Launched in 1979, it captured the tail end of America's bicentennial craze. The cereal pieces were fruit-flavored and sugary, but the real hook was the theme. You could eat a bowl of stars and feel like they were celebrating the 4th of July every morning. Commercials leaned into flag-waving pride, and the packaging often featured bold Americana designs. Despite the novelty, Sprinkle Spangles didn't last long into the 80s, but it remains a perfect snapshot of how pop culture bled into breakfast during the 70s. For those who had it, even a spoonful felt festive. The next cereal takes that same 70s imagination and turns it up, leaving a mark on anyone who ever grew up opening a box at the crack of dawn. Number 9, Crazy Cow. Crazy Cow was one of the most fun cereals of the 70s because it turned your milk into chocolate or strawberry. General Mills pulled this off by coating the Corn Puffs in a flavor powder that instantly dissolved when mixed with milk. The mascot was, you guessed it, a wacky cartoon cow, and commercials leaned into the silly fun of watching your cereal bowl transform into chocolate or strawberry milk. Kids adored it because it was 2 treats in one, cereal and flavored milk. Parents, on the other hand, weren't thrilled about all the sugar. Crazy Cow disappeared quickly, but kids who had it never forgot how magical that color-changing milk felt. Now let's talk about a cereal that nearly started a civil war. Number 10, Quake. Quake was a crunchy orange-flavored corn cereal introduced by Quaker Oats in 1965, alongside its rival Quisp. The cereal's mascot was a burly miner named Quake, who wore a red shirt, blue pants, and a yellow helmet. Do you remember Quaker Oats launching a cereal war campaign, encouraging kids to vote for their favorite cereal? For years, kids even voted in commercials on which cereal they liked better, Quake or Quisp, and eventually Quake lost the popularity battle. Quaker retired both the character and the cereal, leaving Quisp the victor. Still, for kids who grew up in the 70s, Quake was memorable not just for its taste, but for the excitement of choosing sides in one of cereal's first fan wars. It was more than breakfast. It was a playground debate. Okay, moving on to the unofficial victor. Number 11, Quisp. Quisp wasn't just a cereal, it was a whole character. Launched by Quaker, Quisp was a pink alien with a propeller on his head, zooming around in Saturday morning commercials. The cereal itself was crunchy, little saucer-shaped corn pieces, sweet and simple, but it was the mascot that made it legendary. Kids loved Quisp's mischievous cartoon-style antics, which felt straight out of a Jay Ward cartoon. While it faded out for years, Quisp has made nostalgic comebacks, proving just how memorable he was. And that's the thing about 70s cereals. They weren't just food. They were cartoons, toys, and entire worlds poured into a bowl. Let's talk about a cereal whose box on the table felt just as exciting as the cartoons on TV. Number 12, Fruit Brute. Fruit Brute was part of General Mills' legendary monster cereal lineup, alongside Count Chocula and Frankenberry. Introduced in 1974, it stood out with its wild werewolf mascot and fruity cereal bits mixed with marshmallows. The commercials were goofy, just like the others in the series, but Fruit Brute never quite got the same fame. Still, kids who had it remember those neon-colored bowls of fun and the thrill of collecting yet another spooky character on their shelves. Quentin Tarantino even later snuck Fruit Brute boxes into his movies as a retro Easter egg. For many, this cereal was a true hidden gem of the monster universe. If you thought orange juice was for drinking, the 70s briefly asked, why not chew it instead? Number 13, Super Orange Crisp. Super Orange Crisp was Kellogg's bold attempt to pack the citrus kick of breakfast juice into crunchy flakes. Kids found the idea fascinating at first. Orange-flavored cereal was something relatively new, but the reality didn't quite live up to the hype. The taste was tangy and sweet, but not always in the best way, and parents scratched their heads at whether this was a healthy choice or just more sugar. But for the kids who tried it, it was unforgettable, like someone had squeezed a whole orange grove right into their cereal bowl. But do you remember the one that tried to win kids over with a simple cowboy before calling in a cartoon bear for backup? Number 14. O's. Cereal O's, made by Kellogg's, actually dated back to the early 60s, but still made appearances in the 70s. The name alone was funny. OKS, as if the company couldn't decide on anything more exciting. At first, the cereal came with a burly cowboy mascot named Big Otis, but kids didn't exactly line up for a gunslinger at the breakfast table. So Kellogg's made a bold move. They brought in none other than Yogi Bear, hoping the Saturday morning favorite would give the cereal a second life. For a while it worked. Kids loved seeing a familiar face on the box, and suddenly OKS had a bit of personality. Still, even with Yogi's charm, the cereal faded out before long, becoming another forgotten chapter of cereal history. But hey, get ready because nostalgia's about to hit you hard. Number 15, Pink Panther Flakes. In the 70s, you couldn't escape the Pink Panther. From cartoons to movies, he was everywhere. And yes, even on your breakfast table. Pink Panther Flakes were cornflakes coated in a strawberry pink sugar glaze, turning every bowl into a burst of sweet, rosy fun. Kids loved the idea of eating pink cereal, and the packaging, with the coolest panther lounging on the box, made it feel instantly collectible. It wasn't around for long, but those who had it still remember the freshness of pouring a pink bowl of flakes and humming that jazzy theme song in the background. It was cartoon crossover marketing at its best. And just when you thought cartoons in your cereal bowl were cool enough, I remember flakes that promised actual superpowers. Number 16, Power Rangers cereal. Long before the 90s series everyone remembers, there was actually a short-lived cereal tie-in in the 70s with an early Japanese superhero import branded as Power Rangers. It never gained mainstream traction, partly because the show itself didn't stick around in America. But the cereal briefly lived on shelves. It tasted like sweetened corn puffs, pretty standard for the era. But for the kids who got their hands on it, the cereal box felt like a peek into a world of colorful heroes fighting monsters long before that idea really hit big. Today, it's so obscure that even collectors have trouble tracking down a box. But for the kids who tasted the next cereal first attempt, it felt like candy snuck into the cereal aisle. And for the rest of us, it was just a preview of what was to come. Number 17, Reese's Peanut Butter Puffs. Before it became the household favorite you see today, Reese's launched an early version of its peanut butter cereal in the late 70s. It wasn't quite the perfected puffs we know now, but the promise was there. Crunchy corn pieces flavored with chocolate and peanut butter. The commercials went heavy on the "Two Great Tastes" jingle that made the candy bar famous, hooking kids instantly. It felt less like breakfast and more like sneaking candy before school, which is exactly why it stuck in so many memories. Even though the early version disappeared, it paved the way for later Reese's cereals that are still chased today. But the next cereal made us feel like we were on the moon. Number 18, Moonstones. Moonstones took the space craze of the 70s and poured it right into a cereal bowl. Released by General Mills, it featured crunchy little moon-shaped pieces with a sweet coating, riding the wave of fascination with astronauts and moon landings. The commercials were magical, showing kids zooming through space adventures fueled by Moonstones. While the flavor wasn't that different from other sweet cereals, the theme carried it. Breakfast felt like a NASA mission. Sadly, it didn't stick around long, but the cereal was tied to a moment when space exploration felt magical. And just when you thought space was the limit, the next cereal took fantasy creatures and turned them into a breakfast party. Number 19, Monster cereals. No list of 70s cereals is complete without the Monster Trio. General Mills struck gold when they gave us Count Chocula, Frankenberry, and Boo Berry, cartoonish, friendly monsters who made breakfast spooky fun. Each came with its own flavor: chocolate, strawberry, and blueberry, plus marshmallows that felt like little treasures in every bowl. The commercials played like mini horror comedies, with the monsters bickering over whose cereal was best. For kids, it was like Halloween all year long, right at the kitchen table. Unlike many forgotten cereals, the Monster Gang lived on, with seasonal comebacks every fall that still fuel nostalgia. But who remembers the pilot who used to patrol the skies? Only the real ones are getting this. Pause the video and give it a thought for a bit. Number 20, Baron von Redberry. Introduced around 1972, Baron von Redberry was a fruity cereal similar to Frankenberry and Count Chocula. The gimmick was a German World War I-style flying ace mascot, also known as Red Baron, who was locked in a rivalry with another cereal mascot we'll discuss next. The flavor had a raspberry zing that stood out from the usual chocolate and marshmallow competition. Sadly, both Barron and his rival were grounded before the decade's end. But for kids of the 70s, the rivalry felt epic. Speak of the devil, number 21, Sir Grapefellow. Every good hero needs a rival, and Sir Grapefellow was General Mills' answer to the Baron. Marketed as a bold British pilot with a love for grape-flavored cereal, he became one of the more unusual mascots of the 70s. The cereal itself was grape-sweetened oat pieces, a rare flavor in the breakfast world. It's leaned into the rivalry, showing Sir Grapefellow and Baron von Redbury in comedic aerial dogfights, each insisting their cereal was the superior choice. While the feud didn't last long on shelves, it gave kids a reason to pick sides every morning. And just when you thought cereal couldn't get any creative, one brand decided to pour maple syrup right over your morning routine. Do you remember that? Number 22. Buckwheats. Buckwheats stood out in the sugar-saturated 70s because it wasn't just about candy-coated crunch. It had a wholesome angle. Imagine wheat flakes kissed with a touch of maple syrup, giving off that warm pancake on a Saturday morning taste. Parents approved because it seemed healthier, and kids loved it because the maple sweetness made it comforting yet fun. For a while, it struck the perfect balance and built a loyal following. But General Mills made one of the biggest cereal blunders of the decade by stripping away the maple flavor. Without its defining feature, buckwheats lost its charm, and fans quickly left it right where it belonged without it. A classic example of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we haven't talked about one of the most popular cereal choices in the US from the 70s. Number 23, Waffos. Introduced in 1979 by Ralston Purina, Waffos tried to bring Saturday morning waffles straight into your cereal bowl. Shaped like tiny waffles and kissed with maple syrup, it had a cowboy mascot, Waffalo Bill, who made the cereal feel like part breakfast, part cartoon adventure. Kids loved the crispy, sweet crunch, and parents loved the convenience. But by the mid-80s, it was overshadowed by health trends and fading novelty. Still, if you grew up with it, the taste was unforgettable. It was like sneaking dessert for breakfast. And if you think waffles were unusual, just wait until you remember the cereal that crowned itself king. Number 24, King Vitaman. When a sea of sugar took over the cereal industry in the early 70s, Quaker introduced King Vitaman as the healthy alternative. With crown-shaped pieces and a mascot who ruled over breakfast, played in commercials by a live-action king, the cereal promised vitamins and minerals in every crunchy bite. Well, you didn't exactly care about the nutrition, but the fun mascot and catchy ads helped it stand out. For a while, it struck the perfect balance between good for you and still sweet enough to eat. But by the late 80s, King Vitaman lost its crown as healthier options and flashier cereals took over. And just when you thought the kingdom had fallen, another familiar captain set sail with a new flavor twist. Okay, now, do you recall the spin-off from the Cap'n Crunch family? Yes, you got it right. Number 25, Vanilli Crunch. Vanilli Crunch hit shelves in the early 70s with one simple promise: the same crunchy sweetness, now wrapped in vanilla flavor. At a time when cereal makers were experimenting with every flavor under the sun, this stood out for its creamy, dessert-like taste. Ads leaned heavily on the captain's popularity, making it feel like a natural addition to the crunch empire. This was the closest thing you could pour into a bowl of milk for kids who love vanilla ice cream. But by the late 70s, it faded away, outpaced by bolder, fruitier rivals. Cereal in the 70s wasn't just breakfast. It was a universe of mascots, wild flavors, and boxes you could spend hours staring at while the milk turned sugary. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because there are plenty more forgotten flavors waiting to be rediscovered. And comment your favorite cereal from this list and how you remembered it.